Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Backlinking, the PKM podcast. I think the last recording I did, I think that will come out after this one, but I actually misnamed my own podcast at least two times because I always end up saying PKM, the backlinking podcast, instead of backlinking the PKM podcast. But I have gone ahead and I've changed the name. And thank you so much for everyone that provided feedback. And thank you so much again to Mo in the Discord channel who actually came up with the name idea after I filmed and published my first episode. But in today's episode, we are going to talk about something that people talk about a lot in the PKM and productivity space, and that is whether you should have one application, think Notion as an all-in-one application, or you should have a hybrid application, think of something like Tooz that does both tasks and note-taking, or if you should have dedicated applications, like I have mainly had for the last year, a little over a year. I think I've had dedicated applications for everything. Now, my calendar application is no longer with us. Rise Calendar is actually shutting down, but I am going to do like, a full episode on companies shutting down and my thoughts around that, and how we as consumers should like go forward towards or go towards that. But that is again, I'm getting ahead of myself. That is for another episode. I think that will come quickly after this one, or probably early next week, depending on when you're hearing this. But in today's episode, as I said, we are talking about this all-in-one or not all-in-one approach to productivity, and there are pros and cons to both of those. So some people prefer the all-in-one applications, and there are a couple of pros to that. The first one, and probably the most important one, is that you will only have to pay for one application and one subscription. So I am currently paying for a lot of subscriptions, even though I have a couple of lifetime plans as well. I'm currently paying for a lot of subscriptions, which for a lot of people can quickly become really, really tiring and also really expensive. I'm feeling that myself, that it is starting to become expensive, but on the other hand, like the applications are actually saving me a lot of time and, more importantly, a lot of stress during my week. So it is definitely worth it, but just keep in mind that it can quickly become really, really expensive, and that is something, some or one of the reasons why people choose like a one application to have it all, like Notion, for example, that has calendar, it has task management, you have to build it yourself, but it does have it. It has note taking. So some people actually like this all-in-one approach, and I completely understand why. I've tried it myself, but all of these all-in-one applications, they offer so much that sometimes they tend to be a little slow and a little bloated as applications. But uh, what actually was the biggest issue for me personally has been the fact that I always end up in these applications with all of these options to do more customization than real work. The second option, which I'm a bigger fan of and I'm currently using, is this hybrid type of applications that can do one or two things okay. And that is like, for example, in Tooz, you can do task management, but you can also do note taking. I guess you could use Notion and these all-in-one applications in the same way, but there are some hybrid ones that do a couple of things well. And just like the all-in-one applications, you have some of the same benefits. You have actually two of them are all the same benefits. The first one is the fact that there is just one subscription. The second one is that you have everything in one place, just like you would in, for example, Notion or other all-in-one applications like ClickUp. The fact that these applications, these hybrid ones, aren't trying to do it all makes it a little easier for me to use them personally because there isn't as much customization, and secondly, they aren't like uh, they aren't trying to do it all, so they aren't as slow as many of the all-in-one applications. But again, both the hybrid ones and the all-in-one applications will do a worse job than if you choose a dedicated to-do list, a dedicated calendar, or a dedicated note-taking app. That is one of the main reasons for why you should go for the last option, is which is having dedicated applications that do that one thing well. For example, Todoist, that is a to-do list application, but a lot of to-do list applications are now turning into half a calendar daily planner applications because people want that a lot more. But the point is that there are applications like this. To-do is another one. There are a couple of Rise Calendar was a blend actually, but I never used the project management or the task management inside of that, so I just use it as a calendar. But there are quite a few applications that do just one thing well, but I've seen that there are fewer and fewer of these applications that only can do one thing at this point. I feel like it is expected from us that a note-taking application, for example, should have task management, at least some basic task management. And I think a lot of the reasoning behind that is that it is just too expensive paying for three applications, three like core applications, a to-do list, a calendar, and a note-taking app. Then you have to have things on top of that. Like I would really like a Readwise subscription. I've never subscribed to Readwise. One of the main reasons has been that I haven't had like it hasn't had exporting to the note-taking applications I personally use, but I would love to have something like that. I am currently paying for Raycast. That is also like a utility application. And if you just gather up all of the subscriptions, it gets really expensive having to pay for multiple different applications. So I am currently using two note-taking apps, one for tasks, project management, and just I call it like my daily driver. If I need to know something, if I need to know what the next step is, I use that note-taking application. I have a second one mainly for like inspiration. So the thing from my first note-taking app, like I have duplicates. Things that live in my second note-taking app, the inspiration one, actually gets copied into my daily driver application. But if I'm ever looking for inspiration, if I'm writing something, I jump into my second note-taking application to get all of the inspiration, to gather different quotes I want to use, things like that. If I'm looking for ideas for blog posts, for YouTube videos, I jump into my first application because that is where I have them as tasks. I do project management inside of that. I've chosen to differentiate between those two simply because I've tried the other way as well, but my note-taking app where I have a lot of tasks, a lot of things happening, I almost always get like a little stressed looking at it. Not necessarily stressed, but I don't get inspired. It is more like a place where I know I have things, so I don't have to go around thinking about them. So I wouldn't say that they stress me out, but when I open the application, I can get a little stressed. It isn't like this mindful place where I have a lot of quotes and things that inspire me. So I needed something for that. And no matter which application I've used, I've had this issue. So I have decided to divide those two. And after my interview with Sari from Sublime, I did a lot of research and I know that she does the same thing. So I tested it out and I like that a lot better. I have my second note-taking app, the Daily Driver note-taking app that has all of my projects. I use that as a task management tool as well. And I currently don't have a calendar, but I am planning to get one. I'm testing out a few calendars because, as I said, Rise Calendar shut down, so I am trying to find a new one. I'm currently daily driving Fantastical Cal as my daily calendar, but I am considering trying out Morgan as well. And if you are trying to do something like this where you have multiple applications, price comes in as a factor as well. And the reason for why I have not tried Morgan yet is that on the monthly plan, I feel like it is too expensive for what I am trying to do, and I would rather pay for two note-taking apps, for example, than having to pay for something like Morgan, and that is highly personal, which brings me to my answer to this question. And my answer is that whether you should like choose one application or have multiple application, it is totally up to you, and it is highly personal. Some people need multiple different applications. Some people need a dedicated project management tool. Some people don't need as much and they can have everything inside of one place. And I think that I personally prefer having multiple applications. I can't do all in one application, but that might be different for you. It all really depends on who you are and of course what you do. So one of the reasons I have two note-taking applications is because my daily driver application does not do a good job with images, which is really important to me, but it is really personal to me and my type of work because I do a lot of designing for social media. You wouldn't believe it if you saw my thumbnails for this podcast, but I actually work with design. I'm just honestly too lazy to do a good job with my own, but that is something I'm hoping to fix this year. But I do a lot of design. They aren't always good, but I do them, and I need inspiration, and I've tried things like Pinterest to save a lot of pins, and it hasn't worked. I want them in my second brain, and my daily driver note-taking app did not do a good job at that, so I had to get another one, and that was something that was highly tailored towards my personal workflow, what I do, how I work. And that is like the takeaway from all of this. It all depends on what you need. So if you have, if you take a lot of meeting notes, but and you also have a lot of projects, maybe a project management tool that does both tasks and notes might be something you should look into. If you just do a lot of note taking and your note taking and linking things together is really important, but you also want to have a place to store like just daily quick tasks like getting grocery and having a grocery list inside of. Maybe you should consider having two applications, one to-do list, uh, one to-do list and one note-taking app. I honestly personally think that everyone should have a dedicated calendar, like having your calendar inside of a database like in Anytype. I don't think that is good enough. I think you should have a dedicated calendar tool. So maybe find one that has an integration towards your app of choice, or you could use something like Notion that has a calendar as well. But I honestly think that everyone needs some sort of calendar tool because sometimes you need to schedule events, and events is a little hard to have inside of a database. I mean, it might work if you have like very few events, but I at least personally, and I think a lot of people as well, have at least 1 to 2 meetings a week, or it doesn't have to be meetings, but at least events and meetings each week. So I would recommend that. But of course, as I said, it is highly personal. You might actually not need a calendar, but that is something I would recommend. And just in general, I think it is all about figuring out a workflow that works for you, figuring out a way to use the applications so that they work properly for you. This whole productivity thing is a highly personal. It is a highly personal thing. Like I just said, that I recommend everyone have that everyone has a calendar app, but that might not actually be true for you. That is why it is really hard to give advice on what applications people should use, because I don't know them. I don't know how they work. Most of the time I don't even know what they work with, or uh, what type of job they have. So it is impossible to recommend any note-taking apps, and that is also why, like, I make these videos about what applications I use, and they get a lot of views, which is great, but they are more of a thing for entertainment rather than advice, because the applications I've picked are handpicked for my personal use cases and not for everyone else. So I find it fun that people ask me. I would really love to help if people have specific questions, but again, it is highly personal, and you will just have to try out a few and figure out which ones work for you. So it isn't a right or wrong answer on whether or not you should use one, multiple, or use a few hybrid applications. It all depends on what you need, but I would honestly recommend trying out all of them. So trying out an all-in-one application, trying out a few hybrid ones, or a hybrid one with a dedicated tool, or try just having 3 to 4 dedicated tools, just to see how it feels. But that covers it for today's podcast episode. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, and I will try to get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching or listening to today's podcast.